What's up guys, Christos here. In this video, I'm going to be sharing whether you should be investing your money to grow your wealth or whether you should actually be focusing on paying off your long-term debts first. Okay, so maybe you've come into some spare money or maybe your monthly income has increased every single month and you want to put this money to good use, but you're not too sure on how to do that. Now, first things first, congratulations, because having this attitude is absolutely fantastic whenever you receive any money, and it is streets ahead of the general society who would much rather waste their money on things like going out and buying clothes that depreciate in value and maybe just wasting their money on stupid things. So the fact that you're wanting to do something with your money is a really, really good start. But nonetheless, should we be using that money to pay off those debts from the past, or should we be looking to the future to start investing and start growing our financial wealth? And the way I want to start things off is actually with a visualization. And basically what I want you to do is visualize your finances as a water bucket. Now, hang in there with me guys, it will make sense in a second. And with that water bucket, every time you invest and you are adding money, it is simply like you are filling that water bucket up with more water. However, when you have a financial debt that you owe, that is simply like somebody coming underneath the water bucket and piercing a hole through it. Now, the size of that hole and how much water actually leaks out from the bucket is all dependent on the interest that you owe on that debt. And using this analogy is simply the way that you should be prioritizing your debts in terms of which ones you want to pay back first. It doesn't take a genius to understand that you're going to want to pay back your higher interest debts first rather than the lower ones, simply because they're going to be taking more money away from you every month. But should we be worrying about them in the first place, and should we actually invest instead? Let's actually take a look at some real life examples. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the most common debt that we face in society, and that is the overdraft. This is simply where you are in positive balance, you spend some money and you eventually go into negative balance with your bank, and then you effectively owe money to the bank. And based on my research, if you do go into your overdraft, the interest rate that you have to pay on top of the money that you actually owe back to the bank can vary between 19 and 40%. So when it comes to answering our question, should we be investing instead of paying back our overdraft, this one's going to be a really easy one to answer, because to simply make investing more beneficial than paying back your overdraft, you are going to have to be earning 19% or more interest every single month with your investments, which isn't impossible in some cases, depending on what you invest in, of course, but most cases it's going to be pretty hard to do. So I would 100% recommend that anytime you do find yourself in an overdraft, it should be your number one financial priority on getting that paid off as soon as possible. Next up, let's take a look at another common debt that people face, and that is taking out personal loans with their bank. And once again, based on my research that I have just done, if you wanted to take out a personal loan of £5,000, the average interest rate, obviously this does vary up and down depending on the provider, is around 7.87%. Now, whilst this has a much better interest rate than an overdraft, if we go back to our water bucket analogy, what we need to realize is that 7.8% of interest we are losing from the bottom of the bucket, which means our investment is going to have to be higher than that going into that bucket to make it worthwhile not paying that off. And just using myself as an example and one of my investments, my average return on my S&P 500 index fund is actually currently 10%. So if we were going by that interest rate, investing would be a much better option. However, one thing that we do need to understand with investing is that those interest rates that we're going to be earning on our investments are only expected. They are not guaranteed, whereas an interest rate with a debt is guaranteed. And of course, you also have the uncertainty of a stock market crash. And if you did decide to invest instead of paying off your debts, and that was to happen, you could even potentially be in negative interest, making it more of a double whammy and not too much of a good sight on your finances. So having considered all that and going back to the main question, if you did take out a personal loan, I still think it would be the more safer option and more efficient option to focus on paying that loan off first before you think about investing. Now finally, let's move on to one of the most common debts that people have throughout pretty much most of their lives, and that is the mortgage. And this is where things get really interesting, and this is where you're actually going to see a lot of conflicting information across the internet. So I thought I would just add my opinion to the mix as well. And I guess the best place to start before we even start to debate whether it's better to invest or pay off your mortgage first is actually start by taking a look at some of the current numbers, because this does actually play a big factor on the decision that you make. The average length of a mortgage is currently 25 years, so this is the amount of time that you're actually paying back the money you owe. The average house price in the UK is £256,405. And for this video, we're going to say that on average, we renewed our mortgage every single 5 years at an interest rate of 2%, bearing in mind throughout the entire term of our mortgage, those interest rates stayed the same. And basically, over time, our £256,000 house would have actually cost us £326,035, which is actually going to cost us £70,000 more than what we paid for it in the first place. Now, the first thing that most people do when they look at a figure like this that is as big as this is think, oh my God, I am going to have to pay an extra £70,000 just to borrow money to buy a house. Surely I have to pay this off as soon as possible so I don't have to pay as much. And if you are one of those people, and especially if you're one of those people that does get really big satisfaction about being able to say that you've paid off your mortgage, it really gives you comfort in life, because remember, all of this and all of my videos is all about being financially free. So if paying off your mortgage and just being mortgage free is your goal, then I highly suggest going ahead and trying to pay off your mortgage as fast as you possibly can, because there really isn't anything wrong with it. However, I personally think there are some better ways that you can utilize these low interest rates and do much more other things with your money. So hear me out. Number one, as like we mentioned, the average mortgage term is about 25 years long. Now, if you spend all of those 25 years trying to put all of the spare money that you had into paying off that mortgage, that is 25 years of investing you have missed out on. Like I mentioned earlier on in the video, my average annual return for my index fund, which is an investment, is 10% every year, which is 8% more than the interest that you'd actually be paying back on a house. And then secondly, with investing, you are missing out on one of the most powerful things that builds up over time, and that is something called compound interest. And what I want to do is actually do something I do quite a lot on this YouTube channel, and that is take you over to this compound interest calculator. Now, as you can see here, what I've done is put in an interest rate of 10%, and I've said that we're going to be investing for 25 years because that represents the same time that we could spend repaying our mortgage back. And let's say we were going to put £300 every single month into repaying our mortgage, but we've decided to invest that money instead. Like I said, at a rate of 10% every single year for 25 years, what we would actually have at the end of that term is roughly £401,000 in investment value, which makes that £70,000 that you would be saving look absolutely tiny. So for this reason alone, this is why I would 100% take advantage of that low interest rate on mortgages and invest your money instead. Oh, and I'm not done there. The next thing you need to consider is house price appreciation. Now, let's say you did go ahead and buy that house for £250,000. With the current rate of house price growth, over those 25 years, your house price is actually going to be worth much, much more than the £320,000 that you would have had to have paid for it. And just to emphasize that, let's take a look at last year's growth in the housing market for an example, where the average house price rose 8.9%. So if you did go ahead and buy that £250,000 house, you would have made £22,500 in 1 year. And if paying off your house debts first is something you want to do because you want to reduce the cost, if you just wait out 1 year and the house price was to go up, one thing that you can do is use the equity in that house, because obviously the house is going to be worth much more than what you actually owe. You can actually go ahead and remortgage your house in a few years' time and actually reduce your payments like that, or maybe even get it paid off even quicker just to reduce the length of time. There are just so many different different options that you can look at when something like this happens. And for the last 60 or 70 years, this has happened quite a lot. So as you've probably worked out, when it comes to my opinion on whether you should be paying off your mortgage debt first before you start investing, the obvious answer from me is absolutely focus your money on investing and let your mortgage do your thing and your house price go up over time. However, just like with investments, interest rates are completely expected and we never know what is going to happen with them in the future. For example, in the 70s, interest rates were up to 20%. And if something like that happened again, whilst I think it is highly unlikely, this is what the repayments on that average house price would look like. And just taking a look at that, there is absolutely no chance I will probably even take out a mortgage in the first place. All right, so just going back to the original video topic, and that is, should I pay off my debts first or should I invest my money instead? And basically, I want to summarize this video by just saying, in summary, I would say any high interest debts that you currently have, I would focus on paying those off first before you think about investing. However, if you had any zero to low interest debts that you actually owe at the moment, I would probably consider investing into something like the stock market instead. And then just going back to mortgages, whilst this is probably going to be the largest payment that comes out of your bank every single month, I personally believe you should be taking advantage of the current really low interest rates that are out there and the appreciation that is going on in the housing market, and focus your money on investing in other things and letting your appreciation do its thing and pay off the mortgage itself. Finally, as I have mentioned already, this is just my personal opinion. If you did want professional advice, I would highly suggest going to seek out a financial or mortgage advisor. But having said all that, that is the video today, guys. I hope you did find it valuable. If you did, please leave me a like down below, comment in the comment section, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Take care.